Hi, welcome to ZFF Daily. I'm Kirsten Vermilyea. We are going to now go and check out last night's green carpet from the Zurich Film Festival.
I love Switzerland, and they say that the country of Switzerland is the nicest city in the world.
To film on water, do you have any?
I don't know. Stay dry as long as you can.
Okay, so a show that David said to ask me. I do not know what a Meerschweinchen is.
You don't know.
What is a Meerschweinchen?
Welcome back to the studio, and I am here in the studio with the director of C.O.G, Kyle Patrick Alvarez, and the producer, Stephen Nemeth. Welcome.
Writer-director.
Writer-director, yes,
and
sorry.
Producer.
And producer also, thank you, fantastic. It's like having
Costume
your mother
designer.
here, isn't it?
Just give me the credit for the yeah, exactly.
Craft service, makeup.
I would have been bad at that. No, I
everything.
didn't do that.
My big question to you is, who doesn't know what a Meerschweinchen is? You should know what this is.
Yeah, I know now.
You now know?
I now know.
How did you go home and look it up last night?
I found out. I used my Swiss connections to find out.
And what is it?
It's a guinea pig.
And so is that a special thing between you and David?
No, not at all. I think he is a master of irreverency, especially when it comes to signing books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when it's interesting, he's there and he signs every single person's book. He waits through no matter how long the line is, and there's almost no other author alive that does that with his level of exposure. And he talks to everyone. He's in no rush. You know, he really engages with everyone. But you know, every time I have a few signed books from him from before I knew him and now knowing him now, and he always just writes. He does little cute sketches. I have one. He drew an owl in it, and it says the owl's just saying homosexuals are neat in there. I mean, I think that's how he entertains himself.
Right.
You know, getting through all the signatures by coming up with something new each time.
And so you've been a big fan of his for a while.
Yeah. Oh yeah, most of my life.
And so tell us about how this all came together. How were you able to be the first person to get him to say, yes, you can make a movie based on my essay, one of my essays?
It was kind of, there were sort of two elements of it. The first was actually getting in touch with him, which took a long time because he passed on movies many times in the past. So everyone was like, why is this one different? And I tried to explain how the movie would be different, but still it was really, so I eventually just went to a book signing of his and gave him a copy of the movie. My first film, Easier with Practice, which he responded to and really liked, and we started talking. The second part of it was to say that I was interested in taking this story that he happened to have written and making a movie out of that story as opposed to trying to make a David Sedaris movie. And I don't think anyone had really approached him that way before, where I wasn't concerned with matching his voice or mannerisms or appearance, or I wasn't really, you know, I was trying to just go make a film that happened to be based on it. And I think that was intriguing to him because no one had ever really asked him that or approached him that way before. It'd always been like, let's take the whole book. You know, that was sort of always the feeling. Let's take the whole thing and make it into a movie and have all your characters and everything in it. And I was doing the exact opposite. I was like, I want the smallest portion of it. You know, I want this little place. Right. And the specificity, I think he understood.
Right. And just being able to go and ask, I mean, what were the chances of him saying yes? I mean, you went to a book signing. That's exciting for people, right?
It was I mean, honestly, I went in thinking it was a 0% chance in a lot of ways. It was more me being able to sleep, having this idea, wanting to make this film, and just knowing, okay, I did everything I could do, short of embarrassing myself or doing something illegal to make this movie. And if he says no or I never hear from him, I have to be okay with that.
Right.
So I'm really grateful it worked out the other way around.
Yeah, me too. Stephen, I have a question for you. So tell us about how did your partnership come together? How did you guys meet and find each other? And
I will tell you in a moment. I want to dial back for 1 second.
Okay, yeah.
I think we missed an opportunity with Meerschweinchen.
You just want to
Close
say
enough.
Just in
Close
true
enough.
David Letterman fashion, I think we have to milk it a little bit. Because apropos of this movie and this conversation, I think that it's not about the Swiss-German word for guinea pig. I think we should deliver back the Swiss-German word for gerbil.
Oh.
I think we need to be specific.
Ooh, okay.
Because that actually, you know,
okay.
that actually plays into the lore and to the you know, there's some great tales in America about that, but we can.
So is that the word for gerbil or is it the word for guinea pig?
I don't know, but I'm surprised we haven't gotten more specific.
Well, maybe we could do that. We'll do that.
All right.
We'll find it.
And then we'll send it back to David.
We'll send a riddle back to him.
And
Yeah.
forth. That's good.
And I used to have a Schweizerdeutsche girlfriend who called me Mäuschen.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know
Little
what that
mouse,
means.
I think.
Really, that's cute.
So you were told.
So-
Another story.
The theme is small animals that can go wherever they'd like.
Wherever they'd like, yes.
Okay. We have an interesting now friendship. Actually, we live very close to one another. But we met at was it AFI?
Film Independent.
Film Independent.
Yeah.
We were sitting and chatting at a table about what it is that Kyle was next working on, and he's just sort of wunderkind kid that everybody wants to be in business with. And he told me what he's doing, and I said, "Oh my God, I love David Sedaris." And he told me what his plan was, and I basically forced myself on this movie. I just had to be involved, and to call it a partnership is a little bit loose, because I mean, I'd love to be known as his partner. He's a brilliant filmmaker, but really and truly, this was his vision, his execution, his pursuit, his passion.
But you know, there was a lot of, one of the things that was interesting, one of the things for me that was always, was the people that worked on this movie with me that I'm so grateful for, was Stephen and Cookie, one of the other producers, and many, many others that worked on it. It was people trying to understand fundamentally what you're trying to do. And when you're trying to do something that's a little bit different than what's expected, i.e. in this case what we were talking about before, it's people willing to just say, okay, and trust you, and say, okay, I think that what you're going to do is going to work. And finding that can be really rare. You know, it's not hard to find people who want to make movies.
Right.
It's very hard to find people who want to make movies that are good.
Right, right.
And that's the kind of thing. So when you find that, you make sure it works out. And I was grateful for that with Stephen and many others that worked on the film.
I mean, I'm sorry, but also apropos of that, when you make a movie that's true to yourself and true to what your vision is, and not ultimately selling out to anyone else, I think it may not necessarily be what everybody wants that moment, but it has a greater probability of having sea legs and lasting, you know, and enduring the test of time. And I think there's a fine line there, but I think it's a much smarter and much more authentic way in which to make movies. And Kyle did that, not really caring about anything but really making this special and right and authentic and to who he is, whilst still respecting and wanting to honor David. And I think he did that brilliantly.
Yeah, I think so too. I saw the film last night, and I really loved it, loved it, loved it. Before we go on and have more of a conversation, let's take a look at the film.
The film C.O.G., written and directed by Kyle Patrick Alvarez, is based on the autobiographical essay by American satirist David Sedaris. Sedaris visited Kaufleuten on a recent visit to Zurich to read from his latest book, where he spoke to ZFF Daily about his first feature film adaptation.
Kyle sent me his first movie, Easier with Practice, and I just loved it. And so I said, go ahead. You know, and it was understood from the very beginning that he was going to use my story as a springboard to make his own, completely his own movie. And that's what he did, and it's really good.
In C.O.G., a pretentious Yale grad named David takes a bus across the United States to Oregon to work on an apple farm.
And then to see a movie, too, that's based on a period of your life, right? So I was living in a trailer in Oregon, and picking apples, and then you see the apple orchard, and it could have been the apple orchard that I worked in, and you see the trailer, and it could have been the trailer that I lived in, and so it's and I hadn't seen those places in 35 years.
On his journey, David meets people he would never have met back at Yale, like the Mexican migrant workers on the apple farm.
Do you have a favorite scene from the movie?
Well, I think it would be the scene where my character is being really patronizing to a group of Mexicans. It's really painful to watch and really awkward, and you know, if I were 22 and I saw that scene, I would die of embarrassment. But you know, I'm 56, so you have to forgive yourself certain things so that you do when you're young. So I thought it was really well played.
He also meets a man who collects extra-large dildos and an evangelical sculptor who calls himself C.O.G. C.O.G. is a quirky, reflective comedy about a young man discovering his country and himself, and what C.O.G. stands for.
Oh, God, those apples are in pesticide!
Really great stuff. Yeah, and it was so nice to be able to see David talking about, meeting you in the film and being involved and seeing himself up there. One of the things that I took away from watching the film that I found to be really beautifully done by you was the treatment of the religion in the film, and that I don't feel like it was judgmental, but I think I could kind of feel the audience kind of going through lots of different emotions along with it, and I think that you did a fantastic job of handling it really well without also forcing any judgment on what it is. But can you talk a little bit about the role that plays?
Yeah, it's tough. I never wanted to make. I think small town America. Even people with religious, there was an easy target there, especially in the form of comedy, and I never wanted to make the film. In some ways, the film, in and of itself, it's not as much of a satire as David's work is, but the film almost has characters from a satire in the real world. So it's a difficult balance to make sure at the end of the day that the movie still feels respectful to those people. And so for me, it was just making sure that there was a strong balance there, that especially if you're portraying Christian characters, if you're going to portray someone as hypocritical, you got to make sure you portray someone else as a foil to that. You need to make sure that there's sort of that balance there, because ultimately the movie taken just in and of itself, if you show that balance, I think the audience then leaves with what other opinions are. Some people left the movie thinking it's an indictment of Christian hypocrisy. Some people think it's a movie that praises Christian values over. Everyone sort of has a different take on it, and that's what I wanted. I think some ways people read that as ambiguity, but I think ambiguity is not having an intention or not having a purpose for not using a clear-cut motivation with your characters, and I had that purpose for sure, and so I'm glad that people sort of leave the film with different experiences of what it is actually trying to say about the religious beliefs that different characters have.
And it opens up a dialogue, it gets people thinking, and that's one of the intentions, I think, too. You talked also about the actors that you use, who are really fantastic, and I love the fact that they weren't big Hollywood actors. Some of them are recognizable to some people, but the performances were fantastic. But talk about maybe, were these the actors you wanted from the very beginning? How did that all shake down?
Yeah, every movie goes through different versions. So you end up at some different points in development when you're trying to raise money. You have different actors at different times, depending on who's available, when you're going to start shooting. It's always a give and pull, and someone put it best that casting is destiny in a lot of ways. Unless if you're making movies in a big scale, then it's like, okay, if you're going to get Brad Pitt, then you need Brad Pitt when he's free in those days and make your movie around that. But independent film is fueled by when the money's there. So when the money's there, you have to go and you have to use it. And so in some ways, it comes down to just semantics of who's free now. But in a lot of ways, it was more that I had this idea of the kind of actor I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be people who weren't completely foreign to audiences, but at the same time, either you'd never seen in a role like this before, or maybe you wouldn't recognize it all. I felt like it was to stay true to the environment, and that so many characters, important characters in the film, don't show up sometimes until the last 20, 30 minutes of the movie. And it would have been, ultimately, I think, really challenging to an audience if someone just shows up. It would have felt like a lot of cameos stapled together as opposed to real people. So it was more of the kind of actor. But then once we actually got to the opportunity where no one really auditioned for this movie, in the way that I just knew that someone like Corey Stoll and someone like Dennis O'Hare, I've just seen their work and I just loved the idea of getting to work with them. And so that was, at the end of the day, it's sort of I've seen them do so many different roles, and I could see what they would do with these characters, and we would discuss. But finding those people was a lot of the fun, and then getting to work with them and having them all want to be a part of the movie is humbling in and of itself too.
Yeah, it is fantastic. Well, they were all fantastic in the film, and really great work.
Thanks.
Stephen, so you have been a producer for a long time. You've produced Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and last year here at the festival we had The Sessions, which was another great film. But you've been involved in the festival for a long time, and we've seen your face around, and you know a lot of people involved in the festival. Tell us about your relationship and why it's important for you to be part of the Zurich Film Festival.
I'm stunned at how meteorically this festival has risen in its profile and popularity. I'm proud of it because I love and know the people involved with it, and this is my 7th festival. I don't think I was on the jury in I think year 3, and then they couldn't get rid of me. So I sort of felt like, I loved it, and I said to Carl and Viviana and Nadia and everybody involved, I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I thought, and I'm involved in a lot of festivals, this is my favorite film festival in the world. For a lot of reasons. And it starts with, honestly, you have to have a perfect place, an idyllic place. And if Walt Disney were going to create a place for a film festival, it would be Zurich. Because so much of a film festival has to feel like it's a little village, has to feel like there's a community, has to be able to be within walking distance of everything, and has to feel like it has a center and a soul. This has it all, and in the most idyllic setting on the planet. It's an international village, basically. It's very close to the airport. The hospitality is unparalleled. The choice of movies and the guests that have come in are just world class. It's really quite amazing how this has come alive in such a short amount of time and become world renowned, really credible, really viable movie festival. And I'm gonna continue coming unless I take my passport away or something. Or then I'll just have to move here.
Yeah, you have to move here, exactly. And I noticed too, I mean, you know a lot of people here. You recognize a lot of people. You're really involved, and you remember people's names and year after year. And right now we have a segment, and I think you might recognize the person in this segment.
Lights, camera, and movie stars. A lot has been said about all their glamour, their clothes, and the parties they attend. And let's not forget the hundreds of fans waiting hours just to get a hero's picture or autograph. ZFF Daily talked to an especially dedicated fan named Brigitta.
Ich bin Brigitta Häfliger von Sursi.
Sursi, kommen Sie den weiten Weg auf Zürich als Filmfan? Sind Sie ein grosser Filmfan?
Also Filmfan, ich habe so meine speziellen Filme, ja. Und ich finde, wenn man sie schon hier treffen kann, ich bin lange nicht gekommen. Weil ich hatte Angst wegen dieser Masse. Weil ich werde geschützt, normal wir Rollstuhlfahrer, dass wir Vorabschrankungen dürfen. Und das habe ich hier im Filmfestival nicht und das vermisse ich.
Und warum sind Sie das Jahr da?
Ich habe mal angefragt und dann haben sie mir gesagt, ja, wir sollen einfach kommen.
Okay. Und was haben Sie da für ein Buch auf der Schoß?
Das ist mein Autogrammbuch von den Autoren, von den Regisseuren, von den Schauspielern, von allem, was einfach hier gerade auftaucht.
Zeigen Sie uns das einmal in der Kamera.
Das ist der Daniel Brühl, das ist der Jan Dokowitsch, oder wie er heisst. Das ist der Jazzkomponist. Dann habe ich da hinten noch den Alfonso Carey, oder wie der heisst. Und da habe ich den Atom Ego. Ich weiss nicht, wie man das ausspricht, weil ich kann nicht Englisch.
Aber Sie sind ein Fan von diesen Leuten, die Sie dort Unterschriften gesammelt haben?
Ja, weil ich tue schon das Filmzeug verfolgen, wenn ich mal Zeit habe.
Und haben Sie einen Liebling?
Das ist der Lexia, der Richard Gere, und ich habe nicht einmal ein Autogramm.
Oh nein.
Ja, ich war sehr enttäuscht eigentlich.
We're sure we'll see Brigitta again at future Zurich Film Festivals.
Well, that is a true film fan, and I just had a question for you guys. Do you have anybody, have you had any interchanges with people over the years with somebody like that who's just a true film fan, or someone who's a fan of yours who comes to different festivals, or do you have any experiences like that?
You know, this is only my second film, so I've only had a couple times in my life where I meet someone and then they're like, oh, you made that movie? I've seen that movie. You know, we have that. That's the strange. I think that's what you, as a filmmaker, you kind of strive for in a way, that someone's seen your film and they've seen it just to see it, not because they know you or even because they read about it somewhere. Just like they happen to see it and then you meet them. And for me, those are always the most exciting things, because that means the movie has a life independent of you. And that's always the dream, is that it can be that way. You know, so that's, you know, you work hard to reach that moment where the movie can be kind of its own thing and live in it. At that point, you give it to the audience, and then they receive it however they want to, whether they dislike it or like it, or keep on watching it years later, or talk about it or not. And so yeah, so it's strange. I've never had a actually, no, it happened to me once. I was at a Target and I went to go pay, And the woman was like, I thought you were Kyle Alvarez. And I was like, what? And she had worked at Woodstock Film Festival that Stephen's actually also involved with. But this was a year and apart, and I had met her there. She was working a ticket box office, and she'd moved to LA. But I felt like I'd been spotted.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like suddenly I was like, more people knew who, you know, it was one of those days when you walk and you're like stand a little taller, and you know, that was the only time it's ever happened to me.
At a Target, I love it.
At Target, I was buying a video game, I think.
It's great.
Yeah, there are more theaters per capita than anywhere in Switzerland than anywhere in the world. So I mean, I think it's the country itself are film fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I mean, that's another great reason to have a festival right in the heart of it.
Well, we are all fans of both of yours and of your film, and we really thank you for being here today, and enjoy the rest of the festival. Well, that brings us to the end of another ZFF Daily. Don't forget to check back tomorrow for all the latest news about the Zurich Film Festival. Thanks for watching.